Hello there, my name is Rob and I am the Pagan Chaplain for Aston University and for BCU. I'm also the organiser of the Hell's Own Moot. Now, I'm going to put the disclaimer at the beginning. This is in no way to dissuade you from your spiritual path and from your spiritual truths, as these are yours and yours alone. I was asked to do a talk for the summer solstice, and rather than looking at the sun gods and the lunar goddesses at this time of year, I thought it might be interesting to actually look at the inverse of this. Because now it is almost considered canon that the sun is male and the moon is female, or at least feminine and masculine. And I get it, sort of, because if you look at the triple goddess symbol, it is the three different stages of the moon of waxing, fall and waning, and kind of leaving out the new moon. But if you look at the triple goddess in modern archetypes, her consort is actually the horned god. And if you look at the horned god, he's not really a solar deity, but more of a nature one. But then if you also look at ancient cultures, they also didn't all buy into this either. If you look at most of Asia, you look at Northern Europe and a lot of the Pacific islands, including Australia and New Zealand, you'll find that actually there is quite a lot of sun goddesses and moon gods. And also, if you look into the English etymology of the word sun and moon, they actually come from Sol, otherwise known as Sunna, from Norse mythology, and she was the goddess of the sun. And Muni, who in time became Muni and then ended up kind of giving us our word for moon. Also, how did the sun goddess and the moon god just disappear from our kind of spiritual lexicon? Why did it become so ubiquitous? The answer may have its origins with Jane Ellen Harrison, who wrote about the triple goddess, starting with the concept of the maiden mother and an as yet unnamed triple aspect. This was then expanded out by Robert Graves to include the crone, and the moon goddess in its triplicity was seen as Artemis or Diana, Selena or Luna, and Hecate. But the problem with this is that these concepts haven't really stood the test of time academically. Not at least because Hecate herself is not really seen as a crone goddess in antiquity. She is seen as a maiden. Although she's a goddess of the underworld, she's not really also seen as a lunar goddess. That comes later. That is a later attribution to her. Could these concepts been turned on their heads if they'd actually gone for the previous century's obsession with the Orientalist movement and gone with, say, Amaterasu, who is the goddess of the sun, or her counterpart, who is the god of the moon? Maybe, but this is only conjecture, as the classical mythology thing had actually run a lot longer and was therefore more influential. I also feel that I need to address one more thing that many of you may be questioning, and that is there is more of a tendency to equate the moon cycles with menstrual cycles. And although for most they will follow a similar time frame, it's not the same with everybody. And the peak of fertility is not always on the full moon. We don't, in my research, I've not really found who fully started this notion, but I do know that Charles Darwin had hypothesized that humans were a shore-dwelling species, and therefore their fertility cycle was more of a thing that followed the tide, which obviously has its flaws because spring tides are every 14 days rather than every 28. So this also leads to a lack of synchronicity. Another reason why this falls short is that lunar deities are not usually associated with fertility. It is more earth deities, the likes of Gaia, of Ceres and Meter. So I kind of feel that it's a bit of a strange one here, but it has become ubiquitous, the whole conflating the two. And I think this has mainly been down to social media, perhaps, the sharing of ideas. Because certainly when I became a pagan back in the 1990s, this wasn't something that was fairly commonly spoken about. And some of this may be down to the fact that social media was very much in its infancy. And things weren't spoken about quite so rapidly or quite so readily. But nowadays, these things are things that people talk about more freely. Mental health is now less of a taboo subject than it once was, although it is still considered relatively taboo for most people. But also, people are now advertising it more. Even in my local park in Moseley, they actually have a workshop for the menstrual moon cycles, and that was advertised on their park gates. Today we put personal experience as the main driving force in our beliefs, and in today's world people do talk more openly about their experiences, and this means that you get a sharing of new ideas, but it also is a way of allowing us to reassess some of the old and ancient ideas as well. But this is a way of transporting it to the masses. So if you have this new idea, it can gain traction. So what I would like to say to you is explore your connection to the sun and to the moon. What genders do you give to them? Do you give genders to them at all? Listen to their teachings. Write down your experiences and learn your spiritual truths when it comes to the sun and the moon.